Hello, 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 hello. I said one hello off mic because it is Friday. It is past the 2-year mark, and we still have not figured out how to effectively communicate in this pandemic. But it feels very, yeah, and it feels right for the time we're living in. I'm Lucy Gellman, and this is Arts Respond, a collaboration between WNHH-LP Community Radio and the Arts Council of Greater New Haven. I am so excited to be here today with Lindsay Bauer and Carly Chardonnay-Webb. Lindsay is the co-founder and co-artistic director of Elm City Dance Collectiv. And Carly wears many, many hats around New Haven and Connecticut more broadly. She is a journalist, a fierce, fierce advocate for trans rights in the city. Carly, it was a spoken word artist. Carly, what am I forgetting? You do a little bit of everything and you do it all well.
Thanks, Lucy. I appreciate that. I wear a lot of hats, and also I'm like you, I'm a journalist. So
yes,
I do a lot of different things, and also, of course, it's great having Lindsay here. Lindsay, hi. How you doing? But yeah, I'm always trying to add some stuff. I mean,
yes.
I wonder what I want to do next. That's the biggest thing. I have a feeling, I'm thinking that my next foray will be into interpretive dance. So, maybe Elm City's got a little. No, I'm just saying my next foray will probably be in interpretive dance. So maybe like Elm City has like extra room for somebody, maybe. If I can get coached by Lindsay, I'll look good. If I get coached by Lindsay can make anybody. Lindsay and Kelly Lynch can make anybody look good. So
this is a fact. This is a fact. And this is a beautiful segue into what we're talking about today. So it is the 4th iteration of Trans Body, which is a wonderful collaboration between ECDC and the New Haven Pride Center and trans folks in the greater New Haven community. And I will say from the very first time I saw this at the Ely Center, the Ely House on Trumbull Street in 2019, was very moved by the idea that people can have a discussion about an issue that is so inherently personal and has become, for all of the wrong reasons, political, with no words at all. And they can have that discussion with their bodies. And so, Lindsay, first, I would like to ask you a little bit about how Trans Body was born as a collaboration.
Yeah, in 2019, Patrick Dunn, the executive director of the Pride Center, and Kelly Lynch were talking about how to provide programming and opportunity for our trans community in New Haven. And Kelly and I worked together at ECDC, trying to provide, our mission and goal is to provide dance experiences for everybody, for community members, young and old, for everybody in New Haven. It's part of our mission. It's what we do. And so Kelly and Carly worked on Trans Body 1, which Carly will tell you the beautiful story of how that came about. But it was really Patrick and Kelly having a conversation about how to provide experiences for our trans siblings in New Haven.
Carly, I would love to pull you back into this conversation because I was really lucky enough to witness you in Trans Body 1. And I would love to hear about the genesis of that performance and then also the will to continue that performance, because we know as artists and performers in New Haven, your time is your greatest resource.
Well, here's the thing. First, about Trans Bodies 1, which is something I was proud to be a part of. It began just like Lindsay was talking about. Lindsay and Kelly had this idea. They went to Patrick, and Patrick signed off on it. And Patrick just basically just threw the net out into the sea and said, if you're trans and if you're interested in this form of storytelling, if you're interested in dance, no experience necessary, we can do that. We want you. So I remember that first session on that first Sunday, we were having the practice. I was late getting there, like about 5-10 minutes late. And I was thinking, okay, walk in there. just kind of blend in, kind of see what people are doing, and just kind of blend in. Because I was expecting like maybe 10, 15 people there. Because I know of the tremendous artistic firepower in our trans community here in Connecticut. So I figure people be all over this. I get there, and here's Kelly and Patrick just hanging out. And Kelly Lynch just told me, you're the only one who showed up. Said, well, maybe other people are coming. And Kelly's like, yeah, other people will probably come. But in the meantime, let's get some work in. And we start doing dance work, prep work. Kelly is big on using the written word to kind of spawn creative, the creative kinetic energy in the dance. She's big on that. And that kind of taps into where my creativity lies being a journalist. So from there, we started doing some word prompts, writing a few things, talking about a lot of things. And it was a great session. We were there for 3 hours. It was a very emotional session because the ideas started forming. And over those next 3 Sundays, more ideas, more things were forming. A lot of revelations were forming for me. That is the biggest reason I think people should really flock to this project, and we should keep doing it, is because of the revelations that come up. It's a different way of really peeling back the layers of whatever your journey is, whatever your process is. For me, it brought up for that first one, it brought up who was the first person who really understood. In a sense, that first one was a pan to my father. It was a homage to him because he was the first person who at least had an idea that, okay, something is going on with my kid, and something always has. And in some ways, he knew before I did the path, the direction that this was going to go. And in many ways, it was my way of saying thank you, and I wish you were here to see the next stage of it at one level. But at another, it helped me get in touch into what did this mean to me? What did transition mean to me? What did being trans mean to me? What did gender mean to me? And how did all those meanings come together in relation to my life as a whole? In many ways, it helped me heal and reconcile the things in my past that in the past I wanted to erase and say I want nothing to do with it, want no part of it. This convinced me that not only do I don't want to erase it. In fact, I want to celebrate that just the same. Because if it wasn't for all that time, and if it wasn't for all that life led and all those accomplishments made, and pushing through all the difficulties, you wouldn't be here now. You wouldn't be here to celebrate this beautiful thing that is building and becoming with you now. So that's what Trans Bodies 1 was all about for me. And also, it was a sense to look a lot of dysphoria right in the eye and conquer it. And because I wasn't there alone, there was like 40, 50 people there, and they're all looking at me. And that's one part of the story. We were like 2 weeks in, and I was the only person who showed up. And Kelly said, we can do this, or we can, if you're really afraid, it's up to you. If you really don't feel you can do it alone, we can forget about this and try it again. But if you want to, let's go forward. And I decided, let's go forward. As fearful as I was, let's go forward. And the show ended up being very well, doing great. And it was an enjoyable show. At the end, I was in tears. At the end of this, like maybe 35, 40-minute performance, I'm in tears. And I had told so much of my story that I have never told anyone until that moment. And there was a point afterwards, we did a little question and answer, and then people came up to me and said, hey, you were great, you were wonderful. There was one person in particular who came up to me in tears, and they said, you were telling my story. You were telling my story. And we hugged, and we're crying, and we're hugging. Fast forward about 6 months later to Trans Bodies 2 that happened November, Lucy, the one you went to. The person who was crying and hugging me was a part of Trans Bodies 2, and they were part of Trans Bodies 3, and they'll be joining us again in Trans Bodies 4. Their name is Paige Pettit. And that just shows how the ripples run deep. And I encourage everyone, number one, to come see the performance Monday, but also there will be a Trans Bodies 5. And I want to call out, if you're trans and have a story to tell, whether you are a professional dancer or have 3 left feet, come and come as you are. We're ready for you. See Trans Bodies 4, but as you're watching Trans Bodies 4, think about being in Trans Bodies 5. Because one thing I truly believe with every fiber of my being, and what we've seen in the landscape the last few months confirms this even more, is that we have to tell our story. We have to tell it, because if we don't, they're going to, and they're going to give people a false story, as we've seen, especially in the last 2 weeks.
That's right. I'm including during the testimony. So there's been a lot of transphobia that I unfortunately would be interested in talking about, but including during the testimony and the hearings for Judge Ketanji Brown Jackson, there has been a lot of ish that has happened. But first, I want to ask you, Carly, you know what? So not only are you a journalist, but you're a very accomplished sports journalist, right? And so you are not a stranger to being in your body. But what is different about dance? Because I will say you write about sports, but you also play sports. And I know that you are no stranger to athleticism because we have talked about this.
Now, well, really, there's not a lot of difference between dance and sport. In fact, to me, athletics is a form of dance, and dance is a form of sport. The thing is, though, it's just expression with your own body. It's getting your body to do things that you didn't think it could do. It's getting your body to send messages that everyone can understand. That is the thing about dance. I mean, dance is beautiful. Arts as a whole are beautiful. And I mean, I would be remiss not to just give a shout out to Lucy and what you've done to cover arts in New Haven, cover arts in Hartford, cover arts across our state. That has mattered, because too often people dismiss the arts. They dismiss the arts as frivolous, and they dismiss the arts as elitist. No, arts are for the people. Arts are from the people. We've allowed those who tried to take away art from the people to make it this elitist, snobbish, and I'll dare say white nationalist, white supremacist venture, which it should not be. Art, literature, music, and yes, physical culture, sport are universal expressions, and they should be universal expressions. They're done around the world. These are global, universal expressions, and they shouldn't be taken away from the people. And that's one reason why I love the Elm City Dance Collective and support them, because they're bringing this art to the people. Instead of saying, no, the people are down here and the art is up here. No, what they're saying is, no, we're going to elevate the people up and bring the art in line with the people. And part of that is these opportunities for the people to be a part of the creative process. And that's another thing that really drew me, is like, I'll bet you there are lots of people who are saying, can I do this? Could I use my body the way, for example, if you've ever seen Kelly Lynch perform, Kelly knows how to use her body to do some amazing things and tell amazing stories. And there are people who sit, and there's at least one person sitting in every dance recital, every performance, saying, I'd like to be able to do that. And Elm City gives people that opportunity. And they gave me that opportunity, and they gave others that opportunity. And in Trans Bodies 5, we want to give more of you that opportunity. So please, as you're watching Trans Bodies 4, think, I want to be in Trans Body 5, and come on out.
Yeah, Lindsay, I want to ask you, you know, how has it felt to watch this grow and bloom over, I guess now it's 3 calendar years?
Yeah, so Kelly and Carly worked on Trans Body 1 together, the two of them. I was recovering from the birth of my youngest child. And I can't tell you the amount of growth is so heartwarming and so personal as an artist to watch, because I mean, Kelly and I, we provide the structure. Like, it's really about the participants that come with their stories and or just respond to the prompts. So it's sometimes not even questions, or tell us a story. And it's through that and then the comfort that comes out with that kind of practice. This is our cast. This is Carly's fourth, Paige Pettit's third, and Paige Wooler's second. So they've gotten used to our warm-ups and how we work together. So all of these like beginning steps have been jumped because their comfort level is there. They trust each other already. They love each other already. And so I think that the process is becoming deeper, and I just feel so warmed. We were talking about this on rehearsal on Sunday this week about how powerful it is to watch these three humans connect over the screen and transform us as witnesses. And we are so lucky to work with them and to witness their power and harness that strength and share those stories. I feel so honored to work with these folks. I'm going to get emotional. It's amazing. It's amazing.
It's great working with the both of you, because we're getting world-class artistic directors and we have two world-class dance coaches with Lindsay and with Kelly. And that gives a lot of confidence to know that, hey, they're giving us the same guidance, the same performance prompts, and the same level of attention that they're giving people who've been doing this as their life's work. That means a lot, that caliber of talent is willing to come in and open their space and expand their space to people that, like, for example, in my case, never thought I could do this. I didn't do anything in dance. I would save one performance dance class when I was a student at Northwestern. Other than that, I never thought I could. And not even being encouraged to do so, but being shown that, hey, this is open to you. That was big.
Carly, I want to ask you, and this is something that Dr. A.G. Eckert and I talked about before, the Dorothy Awards, which you were at two weeks ago. What is time? I think it was 2 weeks ago.
It was 2 weeks ago.
And you gave such a beautiful introduction to Kimora Harrington, who runs Kimora's Cultural Corner in Hartford. But one thing that Dr. Eckert said that stayed with me, because unfortunately it's so true, is that with greater visibility, what comes is not always greater acceptance. What also comes is greater pushback. Often from people who are extremely reactionary, for all the wrong reasons, and really have no business in anyone's private life. But I'm wondering for you, we are at a juncture where it is scary in places including Connecticut to be trans, to be visible, and to talk about that work. And this is something that you've been very vocal about at Trans Day of Remembrance gatherings for the past, I would say, at least 5 years in New Haven. And so I'm wondering for you how this either helps you get through or grounds you in this moment, that like there is a lot of sort of reactionary knee-jerk pushback from, I would say, people who are pretty reliably right of center.
Well, not only right of center, but more so cis of center. Let's be real about where we're getting at here. What trans body for me this time around will mean it's going to be a call of resistance. but it's also going to be a call of celebration. One thing I've decided one thing about this process and the rehearsals we've done is the thing that's come up for trans bodies rehearsals on those Sundays are my way of discharging my feeling and my way in a sense of getting away from the rancor and getting back to trans joy. And that's something I've really put more and more emphasis on. Like when I'm interviewing people for the podcast I do, trans people in the podcast I do, the Transporter Room, powered by Outsports. I always ask, where do you find your trans joy? And I find myself asking that more and more because too often being a transgender person now is about rancor, it's about heartache, it's about this continual fight for your existence. And people on the periphery think that that's all there is to being trans, that trans is this short, brutal life. And no, trans is beautiful. Trans is beautiful. And that's the thing I want to come out. I want to show our resistance in joy, not just the resistance in our words and not just our resistance in our fight back, but our fight back through our joy. This is the power of what trans bodies did. Another story from Trans Bodies 3 is night before our first practice, I get a phone call. I get a phone call from a person who's thinking about doing it. And they had gotten my number from someone and they called and they told me that, I really want to do this, but my anxiety's through the roof. I don't know if I can. I don't know if I can. And I told this person, tell your anxiety to take a walk. You want to join in on this thing because that was like 6 months after Trans Bodies 1. It changed my life. I said, this can change your life. This will change your life and change your outlook, and you won't be alone. I will be there. I don't know if others will be there, but I know I will be there. So as long as there's two of us, we'll get each other through it. Well, we show up to practice, and we show up to practice next day, and I walk through the door. Paige Pettit is already there. We're warming up, and then this third person walks through the door. And this is the same person I talked to the night before, and they were there. And they really dive into it. Paige dived into it. I dove into it, and it was a great performance. It was beautiful. It went beyond Trans Body 1 because there was more of us. There were more of us, and I'm so happy for that. Now, the rest of the story is this person so afraid to step out, has not only stepped out being a part of this performance, they have stepped out with their art, they've stepped out in their community, and now, as of a month ago, they became the head of transgender programming for the New Haven Pride Center. Their name is Flynn Lockwood. If you don't think that getting into your joy and getting into our unity in joy doesn't matter, think of Flynn Lockwood.
And I want to ask you a follow-up question, because I think that sometimes joy gets really shortchanged. And Lindsay, feel free to to jump in here. I feel like sometimes with everything happening in the world, people are like, we don't have room for that, right? And so I'm wondering, when you're talking to folks, how do you say no? Like, you cannot take away my joy. You are not going. I'm going to center that. And also, I will say, I was at something last night that got very contentious. It got very nasty. People were angry at each other. And I feel like if folks had done like some box breathing beforehand, certainly some dance warm-ups, maybe it would have been a more joyful space. Maybe there would have been some more loving on each other.
Yeah,
I would say so.
Go ahead, Carly.
No, go, Lindsay, go.
Well, I also wear another hat. I teach at Cooperative Arts and Humanities High School. That's where I am right now. And I say to my students every day that one, dancing will change the chemistry in your brain. It will make you feel differently than you do in this moment. And so let's just breathe together. Because I sometimes have high schoolers that don't want to dance, they want to sit, or they want to sit in their drama that's going on. And so I ask everyone to just come and breathe with me. And I start the same way with everyone, asking to breathe together and to find that together, to find that groundedness in humanity, because it's science that your brain changes when you move your body. And when you move with a group of people and you're trying to move together, then it changes even more. And that is joyous.
Carly, jump in.
Well, I can't add any more to that, honestly. But no, that is very true. Just the physical act of movement can really just restructure all your thought processes. And it was our last rehearsal on Monday, which got me in the right mindset to actually go on a national news show. It was a rehearsal rather on Sunday that got me in the right mindset and changed my focus for what could have been a very contentious interview on a national news show on Monday. And in some ways it was contentious, but it put me in the mindset away from being prepared to deflect a largely center to right wing news anchors sexism, and instead redirect it to talk about joy and to talk about a prideful joy of being trans in this society and having a pride to stand up for yourself, but also be cheerful in doing so and be cheerful in affirming another trans person's success. Because as you've probably noticed, there's been a lot of talk about a certain 22-year-old kid who's a fifth-year senior at the University of Pennsylvania who people have a problem with because she can swim fast and she just happens to be a transgender woman. And so many people have thrown brickbats at her. I just want to give her flowers from the start of that interview. Instead of trying to see like, oh, she's this person with all this advantage, I want to first affirm that Leah Thomas was a national champion. Leah Thomas is a 3-time All-American. And she is a transgender woman who's done well. And me as another transgender woman will give her flowers before I deal with your nonsense. And I think that's kind of the mode that I'm going into this performance next Monday and going into Trans Day of Visibility. Let's stop using our visibility constantly in trench warfare with people who will not affirm our humanity. Instead, let's use our visibility to celebrate us and to celebrate who we are and to celebrate each other.
Yeah. First of all, yes to all of those things. I kept myself muted because I was just snapping along in my office. But second of all, there's another component to this, and that is that it's been happening. So 2 of these iterations have been happening during the COVID-19 pandemic. And I'm curious, for both of you, this has been a period of great isolation. And I don't think anyone exists in a silo. Like, I think we inhabit all of the intersections at which we live, right? So at any given time, Carly, you may feel isolated during COVID, but that does not change the fact that you are also a Black trans woman. And Lindsay, you are, and like, I think will always be an educator. But But I'm curious, for both of you, how has this also helped beat back some of the isolation that I think COVID-19 can, like, isolation can be deadly because it can breed depression and anxiety and also, internalized bias. I think that all of a sudden, when we're in our homes or when we're on our screens, it becomes that much easier to let the voices in our heads take over.
Yeah, that's pretty much the. I am isolated.
Nope, I think we have a little freeze.
For a dear friend, a dear friend who is the incubator for transphobia. I think about how much isolation the communities were in being away. Things like being at the Dorothy Awards were so beautiful. Even with masks on, even showing vaccination cards, it was important that we could gather together. And at another level, got to send shout out to my roommates, CJ and Rachel. I moved in with them. We built our own little queer fortress before the pandemic hit. And I don't know where I'd be if I was still living alone and clanking around in an apartment, a place I really didn't want to be in during this pandemic. So no, but that isolation has really hit our community. And when I look at Paige, good to see you. I mean, when that community has been disrupted, and when so many communities, and one of the other hats I wear is I'm a staff operator for Trans Lifeline, and so many of our common spaces, so many community spaces were shut down or lost or delayed by the pandemic. So many people had to delay plans for their transitions, plans for their lives in the pandemic. It's hard enough for cisgender folks. They go through, I mean, there's a lot of things that gets disrupted, but for trans people, it hits even double, because not only you're going through the disruption, i.e., for example, a number of people had maybe surgeries postponed or canceled, procedures postponed or canceled, support groups that they leaned on for social and spiritual support weren't in operation during the heat of the pandemic. These hit trans communities, and by extension queer communities, even harder. So when we can emerge and get together the few times they did, even in protest and in resistance, it mattered. That's one reason why the protest that happened in 2020 mattered even more for my community, for our community, because it gave us that rare opportunity to come out of the bunker and actually just be together, even for a little while, even through masks, even socially distant. That to me is the thing we have to remember from this ugly time that we're still in.
Yes.
Make no mistake, COVID is still a reality. There's no new normal. This is the normal. We've had to learn all over again a new survival narrative for ourselves. In a sense, we've had to learn what our elder communities learned in the 1980s during the grip of the AIDS pandemic. And I found myself often talking to those folks who survived that time and were out in that time, if nothing else, to get the nourishment and get the crucial survival information that'll help our community now.
Yeah. I want to take a moment just to introduce Paige Wooler, who has joined us. They wear many hats, including an artist, a multi hyphenate. Are we saying that now? Is that a thing now? But artists including dance, literature. Oh, can other people hear me? Okay, including dance, literature, and visual arts. And I have been lucky enough to see some of their wonderful work at the New Haven Pride Center. So Paige, I would love to jump right in and ask, what has this performance been for you and meant for you. And this is the second, if I'm not mistaken, this is the second trans body performance that you have taken part in.
Thanks, Lucy, and it's great to see you. So my partner and I moved here during COVID. We moved here just before the lockdown, like by about a week. So I think, you know, the community, the connection to the community was the main reason. I recently started to define my pronouns as they, them, after attending PFLAG meetings in Boise, Idaho. And I met a lot of youth who are going through transition or choosing their gender identities at the moment while they're at schools. And they really showed me the bravery that the youth have at the moment with regards to really choosing their own identity, how they want to present to their teachers and to their friends at school. And so I took up the reins and decided to choose my gender pronouns as they, them. And when we moved here to Rhode Island, we knew nobody. We're still getting to know people. You know, we're still in the pandemic, and some people are still scared to come out and meet and mingle. And so I was introduced to ECDC through Alicia Wilder at 1031 Productions with Metamorphosis Dance Company. And she mentioned this project that Lindsay was working on and said, Paige, you should maybe look this up. So I reached out, we talked a little bit this way, that way, and I joined the third in the season of Transbody 3, and now in Transbody 4.
And you know, and for you, just being in your body, I would love to hear what that experience has unlocked for you or helped you process.
Yeah, I'm married as well. And I'm in a relationship with a partner who likes to go by the pronouns he, him, and we've entered into that sort of 9 years of a relationship where we've started questioning our roles in the relationship and whether we're reflective of a hetero-cis normative marriage, of being masculine and feminine. Are we none of those? Are we our own rules? And if so, what rules do we follow? Because there aren't the role models openly available to us in the community. We do have to connect with some of the history of our LGBTQ plus community in order to understand where we fit in the community. So the experience of like exploring this with, you know, other artists at ECDC and empowering myself to feel that I can explore through physicality some of those more emotive and more tender aspects of my psyche and allow those to come to the surface and also be genderless a little bit within it. You know, we seem to be in a paradox community that sort of holds this very dualistic split between what's masculine and what's feminine, from actions to activities to emotional states. You know, this is a female state of being, and it's hard to sort of, you know where we fit into that, and it can be exciting as well. And you know, the project with Lindsay has just been exciting. It's enjoyable to discover those emotions that come to the surface when tuning into the body.
And I do, Paige, I want to ask a quick follow-up, which is, and Lindsay, actually feel free to jump in because you work with young, I would consider all of us on the call young people, but that's self-preservation, but you work with younger people. Paige, do you think part of that is generational? Because when I have spoken with middle schoolers and high schoolers, I would say pretty consistently, they are so much better than I was at their age at articulating how they feel about things like pronouns, about how they want to be recognized in the world, about how their bodies are changing. And I will say it gives me great hope in the future.
Absolutely. I think, previous generations, and I'm sort of, I feel I'm Generation X, I believe, if I'm describing it properly. And I feel like our generation is sort of an offset of a previous generation that didn't talk about these things, but we're also getting influences from the newer generation. So we're sort of this middle ground between understanding the past and seeing the future. And I think we're in that place of responsibility to nourish and support the younger community, because most of us are sort of in our 40s now. And I think it's a matter of sort of bringing forward those voices from the younger generation, to sort of build the new world for themselves and how they want to do it.
I love that so much. Lindsay, I didn't know if you wanted to add anything.
I agree with Paige. Working in a high school, an arts high school, where in New Haven's it's a nourishing place to be, and it's an accepting place to be for our trans youth and our youth in general. All the teachers get some training on LGBTQ issues around gender identity and sexuality, and so I feel really happy that that so many kids are out and so many kids are able to articulate who they are and how they are and what they want to be. And I agree, we need to take care of them and be mentored by that behavior and that self-knowledge and that confidence and that bravery.
Yeah, and so before my final question, I would just be remiss if I didn't mention the New Haven Board of Education, which is a polarizing and controversial body, but they did something very beautiful last fall, and that was to pass education policy that made it basically you cannot discriminate against trans and non-binary youth in the New Haven public schools. And if you are a faculty member or a staff member, or you work in a school and a student or a colleague or someone makes a complaint that you have been engaging in discriminatory behavior, that's going to be explored more in depth. And so we know that homophobia and transphobia happens in our schools. We know that adults are sometimes guilty of it. And I want to say the BOE did the right thing in doing that. And yes, New Haven schools. So yes, New Haven schools stood up to Betsy DeVos and to the Alliance Defending Freedom, which has nothing to do with freedom. There's no freedom or democracy in that group. But my final question is, I just want to know from all of you how you're finding your joy in this moment. Carly, why don't we start with you?
Well, I'm finding my joy first being in this performance, but also finding my joy by, at one level, being in the performance, at another level, just being present and being visible and being alive. And then at a third level, being in the fight. I mean, there's a lot of joy in resistance as well. And I find a lot of joy of seeing myself in the fight. I also find joy in seeing others engage. And that has been the biggest thing about being in trans bodies, is seeing the ripples that have come from it. It began with a couple of cis people who said, you know what, let's try this. And then they reached out to trans people. I grabbed their rope, grabbed the rope and climbed and pulled. And from there, was able to, and then from there, somebody else also grabbed and climbed on. And then another person did, and then another person did. And before you know it, we have these 4 performances. But also at another level, we're finding more and more in our community that people are doing that across the board, that we're seeing more and more. I'm seeing, especially from social media to out in the streets, more and more trans people are coming together and saying, let's build things together. Let's do things together. Let's enjoy each other's company, and let's tap into each other's talents to build more for ourselves, to build more presence for ourselves, to build community, to build and strengthen community within ourselves. Something I say a lot that I've taken as a mantra is, we're all we've got, but we're all we need. And if there's one thing that gives me hope and joy, it's that I'm seeing more and more trans people, and by extension, more and more queer people, more and more LGBTQ people of all ages coming together and going back, in a sense, going back to the old ways of our community with a new twist. There was something in Trans Bodies too, and Lucy, you wrote beautifully on this. There was a movement we did where we're all pulling each other forward and helping each other through. It was a metaphor for how queer communities have always been. We always swing up for each other, and we build the families we choose and the support we choose. That has always stayed with me through every day of my life, because I am here now and can affirm and live my truth and live it with a smile and with joy, because so many other people were willing to embrace, and this was 5 years ago, mind you, were willing to embrace me at the beginning when I was a bad wig and a makeup shade that was off. We're all we got, but we're all we need. And I find joy in that now. So many people who did that for me are continuing to pay that forward and put me in a position where I can pay that forward. That's my joy.
Thank you so much. So I'm going to page jump to you, but first I have to give a station ID. So if you are listening, this is WNHHLP 103.5 FM New Haven, and you are listening to Arts Respond. I'm Lucy Gellman, your host. This is a collaboration with the Arts Council of Greater New Haven. Paige Wooler, thank you so much for letting me do that so we don't get the FCC kicking our butts. And I would love to know how you are finding your joy.
I'm finding my joy in the very basic, simple things. Just sitting outside our house, listening to the birds in the morning. We have a chorus that comes on first thing in the morning. As the sun comes up, the birds start chirping. And it gives me sort of great sort of joy just to sort of be involved with nature and somewhere peaceful and quiet. I'm enjoying my collaborations with other people that I'm doing at the moment. There's a lot of voices that have been muffled for the last 2 years due to COVID, and there's a lot of expressionism that's coming out of that, including our project with Transbody 4. Just very simple things, good food, nice company, pleasant conversation.
Lindsay, take us out.
I'm finding joy in community and art. It's always been really important to me as a member of the LGBTQ plus community to work with family. And so I find joy in that takes me through my weeks and my days.
So the actual last thing I always ask is, if folks are saying, oh my gosh, 1, how can I watch this performance? And 2, how can I get involved in Trans Body 5? Because we know there's going to be a Trans Body 5, right? How can folks find you?
Well, you can just Google Trans Body. You could look up the New Haven Pride Center and go and scroll down and find that as a program. And on Monday night, we will have our final sharing. So next week is Trans Week of Visibility. And so we are in partnership with the New Haven Pride Center, are live streaming the event at 7:30. It'll be on Facebook, it'll be on YouTube, and you can go to either ECDC or the New Haven Pride Center to find those links there.
Awesome. And if someone says, oh no, I'm working at the time that this streams, will they be able to see it after the fact?
Absolutely. It'll be up there. You can also catch Trans Body 3. We still have the links up so that people can see. And that's one thing that's been so great about being virtual is that we've reached so many more people. We could only have 60 as audience in the LE Center when we had it live, but we had over 260 people sign on a year ago during the pandemic nationwide that were able to see Trans Body 3, and we're hoping for that as well in the same for Trans Body 4 on Monday.
That is so awesome. Okay, Carly Webb, Paige Willer, Lindsay Bauer, thank you so much for joining me on this episode of Arts Respond. I'm really excited to go into the weekend. I'm excited for this performance, and I'm excited to just get to share an earth with all of you. It makes it a much kinder place and a much sweeter place to live. Have a wonderful weekend, everyone.
Thanks so much.
You too. Thanks, Lucy.